I told you we were going to recover. So all I have to do is hit the button that says recover. Simple, right? So let's do that. Okay, so right now it's telling me that the high side is 65 psi, the low side is 64 psi, and it's saying to start AC to perform diagnostics, or with the AC off, press next to begin the recovery. So I'm going to hit next, right, which is right in the center. Okay, now it's clear in progress. The system is going to clear the lines. It's going to get noisy. I may take a break and let it do its thing because it takes some time to get this done. So now it's cleared the lines and it is it's going to start recovering. Okay, so it will use the pressure in the system to pull or to send out some of the refrigerant, and then it'll turn on a vacuum pump which is located in the machine and it will pull it out. So right now it's slowly coming up. Right? And it takes a while. During this time, you'll hear it change as the vacuum pump comes on and as the different things happen. And as it drops, we'll be watching the gauges as well. I'm going to stop again. As you can see, it's drawing the pressure down. It was at 65 pounds before, and it's slowly coming down on both gauges, pulling it out of both sides, right? And these are going to mirror those pressures, right? It's still dropping, the high side and the low side, as it pulls it out. And right now we're at 0.52 pounds. As we get down to, we've got just about a pound in there. We've now hit 0 on these gauges. As you can see, these are also at about 0, just getting under. So now that it's turned on the vacuum pump, and I don't know if you can hear the difference because we shut down for a moment, but basically it's drawing a negative, not a negative, but a low pressure below the atmospheric. Now, our system has recovered 1.59 pounds, and it's saying a clear in progress, which means it's clearing the lines, and all our choices are at the bottom where it's paused, but anyhow. So now it will pull the oil out of the system. The oil is mixed in with the refrigerant, and it can be changed, added, done whatever. It'll tell you how much oil is actually coming out of the system. It saves the oil in these canisters down here. The center one, right? So it all drained. Okay, so now it has done that. It has drained 0.4 of an ounce of oil and recovered 1.61 pounds. Okay, our system now is running in a vacuum. That vacuum doesn't seem low enough to me. It should actually pull down to about 28, 29. And so I believe we've got a leak somewhere. We could have a leak here. Every time you have a low charge, that means you have to do a pressure test on it, or a vacuum test. Okay, vacuum test won't tell you where the leak is, but a pressure test, if you use the soap, okay, with our soap bottle, spraying everything down, it will tell us if we can find bubbles to find a leak somewhere, right? At all the joints. So, and I don't see any leaks. So, but what I've done here is I've hooked up this nitrogen bottle. Nitrogen is an inert gas. It doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't disturb the system at all, okay? And I put, by using the regulator, I put 200 pounds into this thing. In fact, I might be a bit over that. No, I used to go a lot higher when I was out in the industry. But 200 pounds on my outlet of my regulator, and it's going into where the red line was, because it fits on that size there, right? So we've put that pressure into there, and this thing is all running 200 pounds now of just nitrogen. This side is also quite high. This, it doesn't really get accurate after at 100, but anyhow, this system is seems to be good. So now I can, I've tested it, and I've tested all the connections on the machine, right down there, and now I'm going to release it. The beauty of this is it doesn't matter if you let nitrogen go to the air, okay? So I'm letting the nitrogen go here, right here. Right? Okay, so I'm going to drain this down. It's going to drop all that nitrogen out of there, and then I'm going to have to recover again. Okay. Okay, I've now changed out the Robinaire machine because I was afraid there might be a leak on it. And now I actually hit the switch to create a vacuum. So what I've done is I'm creating a vacuum in this system, and if you notice, it's going a lot lower than it was before. It was only getting down to about 12. That's what made me think there was a leak on this system. So now I'm getting down to 23, maybe I'm hoping to get to 25, 26. I've seen vacuum pumps that'll pull 28, 29. And that's a really nice vacuum to have in there to help you pull that refrigerant back in. Now I'm going to have to put the right amount of refrigerant again or in, and this system will hold it and save how much came out. But that's not going to help us. We have to go to the manufacturer's specs to find out what this will hold. And that is down here, right there, okay? So 28 to 32 ounces, which is, I believe, 1.6 is pretty fair for this system. So once I get my vacuum done, I will turn you back on and we'll start charging. So you'll notice on this machine that this tank has 14.36 pounds in it, and I have now pulled the vacuum down, and this is the most accurate of the vacuum gauges, and a micron gauge would be much better. So the micron gauge will tell us exactly how much it is, and you can actually use that as a test for any imperfections in the system. If you have leaks, you cannot charge an air conditioning system. So we're going to recharge this system now. It's been holding, and we're going to, we've got a vacuum in it already. If it hadn't got a vacuum in it, I would be hitting the button that says vacuum. Okay? Vacuum and recovery are not the same thing. Recovery is pulling the refrigerant out. Vacuum, or evacuating, simply brings the pressure down so low in the system that it'll actually boil any moisture out of the system, and that's our enemy, is the oil, is the moisture. We want to get rid of that moisture. So usually you would vacuum or evacuate for a good 30 minutes. To make sure that you boil all that water out of there, because if you drop the pressure enough to get a full vacuum, it will actually start the water boiling and the vapor will be pulled out by the vacuum pump, okay? Recovery is pulling the refrigerant out. Evacuation is pulling the moisture out of the system once it's empty, okay? So I'm going to hit the charge button, and this thing will tell me to, so the charge I need to put in is 1, so I had to miss that. I had 10 pounds going into it. That would be a mess. 1.60 pounds, and we can say maybe we want to inject some oil, because we took out 0.4 of an ounce of oil. So we put our 0.4 of an ounce of oil in, and then we save, and now we're ready to start. Okay, so we go start. So it begins by injecting oil. It's all automatically done. Now they say in here, do not disturb the unit. The charge accuracy will be affected. If this system is supposed to hold 1.6 pounds, which it is, this means that that system is good. It's tight, it's not leaking, and it should hold for a very long time. If it's low, you've got to look for a leak before you put anything else into this thing. okay, before you put refrigerant into it. You can see that the pressure is coming up as it's filling it. And it is the vacuum that we made on the system with the vacuum pump by evacuating the system for a half an hour that will pull that refrigerant in, okay? And the pressure comes up, but just because you've got pressure on your gauges does not mean that the pressure is all, or the pounds are all in there. A very small amount will give you the same pressure as a large amount. So there's no way to tell what kind of charge you have in the system until you put the full system in and run the gauges, and the only way to actually tell what the charge is that's in it is the amount that you weigh on your machine by weight. You don't do it by pressure. So this is going quite quickly, 1.55 pounds, because this vacuum pump in this machine makes a lot more vacuum, so that worked out well. So I don't want to bore you, but maybe we'll wait till it gets done, because this time, to reiterate again, evacuation means taking the moisture out, bringing the vacuum so low that the water will actually boil out and come out as a vapor. The recovery is still using a vacuum pump at times, but it still will pull, that's pulling the refrigerant out, not the moisture. Okay, so now we're saying we've put our charge amount in, and it says start the AC to perform diagnostics with, or with the AC off, press next to clear the hoses. And so at this point, I can press next and clear the hoses, but we want to run our system. So why don't we turn on our system? So this means that in a vehicle, what you would do is actually fire up the vehicle, but we're going to just turn our machine on, okay? And we're going to be looking at our gauges to see what happens. The compressor will immediately start running. We're going to put liquid charge. We put liquid charge into the high side, right through that red service port, okay? And it put liquid there, and that won't damage the compressor. If for some reason somebody put a liquid charge through the blue line, that would slug the compressor, meaning it would cause the compressor to have liquid going into it and damaging the compressor, okay? So we charge through the high side. The machine does it for us, but still. Okay, so now the compressor is building up the high side to about 115, working its way up, and we're still a bit high on the low side, which should be around 12 to 20 or 12 to 18, 15, somewhere in there. Okay, but it will be high, but it should be under 30, I would think, okay? And you'll get to know what these pressures should be like, okay? And we can run this system and see what the pressures do. And one of the main things you really want to do is go into the cab where this would be in the HVAC system, usually on the right-hand side of the dash, and put your thermometer in the vent and see what kind of cold air is actually coming out of it. It's cold, okay? If you were to touch this, very, very cold, okay? So, and then this one is actually putting the heat out. So a lot of my students on summer days will say, hey, fire that thing up so we can cool it off in here. And that's a great idea, because if we had this side, the cold side, the low pressure side, or the evaporator, inside the classroom, that'd be great. But we're also releasing the heat out of the condenser side. And that's going to give us a problem, because that's going to release the heat. The evaporator is going to remove the heat, and we're just pumping it back and forth. And basically it won't change the temperature of the room very much, because of anything that we take the heat away from on this side, we're going to be putting it back into the room on this side. So that doesn't work very well. In a vehicle, this side is taking the heat out of the cab, and this side is releasing it out to the outside air through the fan in front of the rad. Okay, so this has been it, and I know this might have been a bit of a rush, because we're into a situation where we have to be doing online teaching, and I wanted you guys to actually see the system. So if there's any questions, don't be afraid to contact me, and thank you very much for your attention. We'll talk to you soon.